Okay, I thought in this video I would do a bit of a test of the new Apple iPad. This is the 2018 version. It is the budget version. It doesn't have the same specs as the iPad Pro, but it is now compatible with the Apple Pencil. I've already done a couple of videos where I reviewed and unboxed this iPad, and I've also done another video where I compared the iPad Pro and this new iPad and how it uses the Apple Pencil and what the differences are. So if you want to check out those videos, the links are down in the description. But on this video, I thought I'd do a bit of a sketch, just actually put it to the test in the way that I would normally with my iPad Pro, and just see how possible it is to really produce like a doodle or a beginning of a piece of artwork, and just see whether it's possible to get lost in the image and how it feels compared to those other devices when you're actually using it for something creative. Most of my other videos are tutorials where I show you how to draw things like landscapes or things from the human figure. But when it comes to my own work, I tend to work in quite a surreal way. So it's quite automatic. And by that I mean that I just start with making shapes and doodles and see what happens, see what evolves out of it with no real preconception of what I'm going to actually produce. But in order for that to work, then really the actual device itself needs to kind of get out the way a little bit. So it just feels ideally like you're just drawing on a conventional surface, really. Now, in terms of the latency, there really isn't that much of an issue when you're in the middle of a sketch, because most of the marks that I'll end up making in a sketch are quite slow. So only when you really start to move quickly will you notice perhaps a gap between the stylus and the actual mark appearing on the screen. So latency is not really that much of an issue. What perhaps is more of an issue compared to the iPad Pro is the way that it feels. It does feel a bit different in the respect that the pixels or the glass is actually laminated to the pixels on the iPad Pro, whereas on this version the screen has a gap between the pixels and the glass, and there's air between them essentially, and you can detect that subtle difference. But in all honesty, that's only if you're going from perhaps being familiar with the iPad Pro and how that feels. But if you're not familiar with that, then this is probably going to be the best experience of using a stylus drawing on a screen that you're likely to have ever had. So if you're one of the people that are considering getting one of these because it's a more affordable version, then it's definitely not going to be a barrier to being creative. Is it the best drawing experience that it's possible to have? No, it isn't. But that doesn't mean that it's going to create a barrier to being creative. I would still say that this device has plenty going for it. If you're unable to buy the iPad Pro at a similar cost to this device, then this device is pretty good. The surface of the device doesn't have the anti-glare coating, so the screen is more reflective, obviously. Another aspect of that is that it is a louder surface too, so not only with your fingers, but the Apple Pencil as well clicks a little bit more loudly on the screen. That isn't something that would annoy me, but it might annoy the people nearby if they can hear as you tapping away on the screen, but perhaps that's more of a concern for them than it would be yourself. In the past, I've tried to sketch onto the iPad Air using older styluses, and really it's not possible to get a sketch type effect. It's not really a good way of working. The iPad Pros and now this budget version that use the Apple Pencil are considerably better than the older options, and certainly with the iPad Pro you really get past the fact that you're working on glass. It's slippery, and if you're not used to it initially, you have to get used to that. And I have to say, this does feel like a step backwards from the iPad Pro, but not a drastic one. You do feel the slight disconnect a little bit more than you do on the iPad Pro, in as much as there is a gap between the pixels and the nib because of the lack of the screen laminated to the pixels. You know, you might be talking a millimetre or less than a millimetre difference, probably quite a bit less than a millimetre. I'm not sure what the exact gap is between the glass and the pixel really, but it does make you more aware using it that you are drawing on a glass surface again. Feels very definitely like the image is under a piece of glass. And I guess if you're going to use a screen protector, like a tempered glass screen protector on it as well, that is going to add another layer to that equation. Personally, I've always opted to just be very, very careful with my iPad, and so far with the last several iPads have been quite lucky and not had any significant scratches or any broken screens. But if that is something that concerns you, then obviously a screen protector is the way to go. So just bear in mind, however it feels now, in terms of that disconnect, the distance between the pixels and the nib, the addition of a screen protector is only going to add to that situation. But that's the same with any device, really. It's the starting point is pretty good. And if this was the only device available, or the only one that I was able to afford at this time, then I would be very pleased with this. I feel that one of the indicators as to how accurate and how useful the Apple Pencil is the degree to which you have to zoom in and out in order to use it. When I was using the old sort of rubber tip styluses on the iPad Airs, it was possible, but it would always be necessary to keep zooming in and out in order to get any kind of accuracy. But whereas with the Apple Pencil, even zoomed out, it's not really necessary to keep zooming in and out. Maybe a touch just here and there, but certainly nowhere near the same degree as you would have had to with the older styluses. So for me, just a slight hint of zooming in and out is more than enough. And actually, for the majority of the sketch, you'll notice that I'm not really doing a lot of zooming in and out. And I can, with quite a good degree of confidence, find an area I want to add a detail to, and almost as accurately as I would be able to with a real pencil, pinpoint the detail I want to put in there and accurately make the marks that I want. What we'll say about digital drawing is, please don't expect the device to make you a more confident or better drawer than you are currently with pencil and paper. I still think that fundamentally you need to learn how to use the basic materials of pencil and paper. As things stand, I see the iPad and the Apple Pencil as an extension of and a development from the core skills of being able to use pencil and paper. I don't think at the moment necessarily that they are a substitute. I mean, there may be people out there that are learning and cutting their teeth as an artist on devices like this. But for me personally, I started with pencil and paper. They weren't available, in fairness, at the time when I was starting out as an artist. But really, I think that pencil and paper is the best way to start and then move from that point onto other mediums like digital art. But if you're confident with a pencil and paper, then I think you'll find it a fairly smooth and easy transition to devices like this. Okay, I'm going to leave the sketch there for now. I don't know what it is, it's just a bit of a doodle. It's the kind of way that I'll start, and then I start to think about what I potentially see within the painting, and then eventually it becomes something quite surreal, colours, textures, things like that. But I just wanted to test the device, and yeah, I'm quite happy with the device, really. It's a good little device. If it's the first device of this type that you've ever had, I think you'd be more than happy with it. I think it does 90% of the drawing experience of the iPad Pro. There's other features, obviously, that the iPad doesn't have compared to the iPad Pro, but just in terms of the drawing experience, it's about 90% there of what the iPad Pro can do. Feels very similar. You will be slightly more aware of the fact that you're drawing on glass compared to the iPad Pro, but that doesn't mean that it's a barrier. Anyway, if you want to see proper pictures, real tutorials of how to draw actual landscapes, things like that, then please check my playlists. And like I said earlier, if you want to check a full review of this tablet and a proper test of the latency differences between this and the iPad Pro, then there are links for those videos down in the description. Otherwise, please subscribe, press the bell notification button next to the subscribe button, and I'll catch you back here again. See you later.